All right. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. And Shabbat Shalom to those tuning in on Facebook. This is Great Awakening Indy, and we're having a good class, and we're talking about how to study holiness. Holiness. Right. All right. Holiness. Now, before I get started, check this out. What y'all know about holiness? Because most of y'all, some of y'all I knew when I was within the church. So what do y'all know about holiness? I'm just curious about, when you knew about this lesson, what you were thinking.
What I understand is just living a life, trying to live a life free of sin. Holy in your verbiage, holy in your actions, you're holy in your day-to-day living, holy in your dress, in your appearance. So just holiness across the board. I grew up in a Pentecostal church as well. And, they weren't real strict on the clothing, but like apostolics were, like, dresses, no lipstick, no earrings, no jewelry. But it was still about being holy, dressing appropriately.
Right. When you started talking, I was like, oh my goodness, it's 5 minutes, not even 5 minutes in. Okay. We talking about pants. We talking about sisters, you better cover them ankles. Better cover them ankles. Don't you put no fingernail polish on, and definitely don't put no lipstick on. You're gonna be in trouble with the mothers.
Yeah, ours wasn't that bad. But you couldn't come in there with red lipstick or red nail polish.
Oh, you better not.
Yeah, you couldn't do that. And you had to wear dresses, you had to wear stockings, slips, all of that stuff. Like you had to have your arms covered up. Like none of the stuff we see now would have been able to fly, back when I was, young, being raised in church.
Right. All right, Sister Yaya, I saw you got your hand up. Go ahead, talk to us. What you know about holiness?
Yeah, I'm using this phone, so I can see it. So I don't know. I just saw the notes from this week, so I'm sorry that. But when you asked me that question, in my church, that's not necessarily what it was called, but I can say this. When I was growing up, every woman in the church had on. I can tell you they did not wear pants. Actually, when they were allowed to wear pants, there were several people that left the church because they thought it was wrong. But I never wore pants growing up, and it wasn't that I ever heard we're not supposed to wear pants. It just wasn't done. I don't remember wearing pants until I was a teenager. And I do remember the pastor saying, you can wear pants now. And then, but that was like I said, when I was a teen, and I never knew we couldn't wear pants. We just didn't wear pants. And then there were people who left in. So it was something, I guess, that people knew. It was just a tradition. Maybe that's from my eyes as I looked at it, but I now know it's different than that. But as a kid, I just thought it was something that we did. I didn't know it was taboo because it wasn't allowed. And I'm gonna leave it right there because there's so much I could say, but I'm gonna leave it right there.
Right. That's one of those things where when we talk about something like this, immediately we're thinking. I mean, it's just the nature of how we were brought up, how we were raised. We're automatically, when you say holiness, you think in the church, don't you wear no pants in the sanctuary because it's the house of God and the gate of heaven. Don't you do that and disrespect Jesus like that, wearing your pants. You read Deuteronomy 22:5, you know, you're not supposed to put on a man's garment. Pants are made for men. So sis, don't you be doing that. And we preach hellfire and brimstone on the sisters. They got to go to work and they got to wear. Look, I'm gonna use a word like, look, I'm gonna sound real old. Last week y'all got me for putting my thumb in y'all's grits. Look, y'all sisters wearing them breeches. Look, I sound real like my grandmother right now. You wearing them breeches. That's gonna send you to the lake. No, Granny, it's not. Let's see, Sister Anderson, did you have your hand up? You want to talk about how we was brought up and raised, what holiness is? Let me take you off mute. Hold on. There you go.
All right. I just kind of wanted to say that holiness was a traditional standard, man-made rules and regulations without knowledge of the Torah. Things that were that we were denied of were somewhat hindrance of what things. The reason why some of our children have gone buck wild, even after they grew up. But holiness to me was, like I said, man-made rules and regulations and their standard.
Right.
That's all I want to say.
I agree, 100%. So yes, so holiness really, the way we were brought up is not actually the way it was, and pretty much everybody that commented said the same thing. I mean, it's something how you can believe something and you can sincerely believe it. I mean, they told us in the church the brothers couldn't have beards. I don't know if y'all came up in the church, a holiness church like that, but the brothers, we couldn't have facial hair. We had to shave. Like, you couldn't have no beard, no goatee, no mustache, and I thought I was bending the rules by letting it grow a little bit so you saw a shadow. But those were some of the rules that we had. But if you notice, when you actually start to read and really study the Bible, a lot of those are man-made, as Sister Anderson mentioned. Those are things that man made up without any type of knowledge of the Torah, of what the instructions say. There's no sin in a man wearing having a beard, because obviously all the men had beards. There's no sin in a sister wearing pants. Why? Because there were no such thing as pants in the Bible days. It wasn't invented yet. They were called pantaloons, right? And pantaloons, yes, they were made for originally men, yes, but a man can't wear women's pants, or then that's a whole nother conversation that y'all ain't ready for.
So what is Deuteronomy? What is Deuteronomy then when it talks about women should not wear man's clothing? What was that then?
That's talking about battle guard. Well, it's definitely not talking about pants, but we're talking about battle garments. Like, a woman is not supposed to put on a man's like armor or battle garments, or watch this, cross-dressing, because there's nothing new under the sun. So you did have effeminate people that were dressing up to be women and all that stuff, but you got to read the whole chapter in context. That's the thing that most people don't do, because in the same chapter it talks about wearing clothes of diverse sorts, and sowing seed, different types of seed, or having an ox trading with a different animal. You weren't supposed to do that. So we're talking about something that the actual culture. So yeah, it had nothing to do with sister wearing Guess jeans or Levi's or whatever. So, but you see how you have to pull those layers off to get an understanding of that. So let's see, holiness. Leviticus 19:2. Speak unto all the congregation of the children of Israel, and say unto them, ye shall be holy, for I, Yahuwah, thy Elohim, am holy. That's a very familiar passage of scripture. And if you really dug into this, I try to send you guys like a basis of what we're going to talk about. But you should already be, if you're new to this class, you should already you should already be reading the Torah on a weekly basis. I'm talking about like, even if you're doing the Torah portions, like 5 to 6 chapters a week, even if you're doing something like that, you should be doing that without me telling you that. It's just you have to develop, you know, for a lack of better words, you have to develop chops. You got to develop teeth so you can digest what we're going to talk about. I can send out, if you guys like, definitely put it in the chat. If you guys would like weekly Torah portions, I can, you know, text them out to you or message them out to you, and we can do that. But yeah, holiness. So we're supposed to be holy as he is holy. All right. And let's see. Definitely, Brother Rodney put in the chat, everybody back in the day wore robes. Yes. Side note, me and Ak Rodney spoke about this. We dealt with this question like last week or a couple weeks ago or something like that. But when you see the pictures of like, this has nothing, I'm just showing you something. When you see the pictures of the Last Supper, people put on their walls, or screensaver, everybody I know, especially a lot of Hebrews, they kind of like focus on, well, he wasn't this color. He didn't have blonde hair and blue eyes. Okay, we like know that. But there's something else in that picture of the quote unquote Last Supper that is obviously off. Does anybody know what's off about the picture besides Caesar Borgia? It's a freestanding question anybody could answer, I mean.
Clothing.
Right. The clothing was off because they were not wearing, they were wearing togas, Greek togas. So the Mashiach obviously wasn't a Greek, right? He wasn't European. So why would he be wearing something like a Greek toga? That doesn't make any sense, but that's called cultural misappropriation. Sister Ya, you had your hand up?
I did, but she said what I was going to say.
Oh, okay, gotcha. So yeah, so we have to keep all that in mind. A lot of what we have is the history we've been told. We have to like retrain our brains for that, unlearn what we've learned, and kind of like learn how it's supposed to be. So holiness. All right, I'm going to change this. All right, nefesh. Y'all remember this word from last week? Nefesh. In last week's lesson, we learned about the dietary instructions and how they specifically tie to the condition of our soul, or nefesh. That's Leviticus 11 and 43. So remember, we dealt with this word, and it is translated in your English Bibles as soul, or it might say something like yourselves in that verse. But it's noon, pei, and shin. Noon, pei, shin. Or noon obviously is the seed, pei is the mouth, shin is to crush or destroy. You shall not make yourselves abominable, neither shall you make yourselves unclean with them, that you should be defiled thereby. And I edited that just so you guys knew. We're talking about what you eat, what you consume. Many who simply read the Bible do not realize that the scriptures are written on levels. There is a straight meaning, but there are also other meanings that echo throughout the text that give body to what Yahuwah is saying. So several people in the class kind of like know what this means. I'm going to pick on somebody and see if they remember the teaching. Let's see. Hey, Shabbat Shalom, Sister Nadia. How are you doing?
I'm good.
Awesome. All right. I'm going to pick on Sister Marcia. So, Sister Marcia, do you remember all the levels of scripture interpretation?
I don't remember all the levels. I know that there's 4. There's one spiritual, there's one surface. I can't remember the names of them though.
Okay.
But
That's all right.
there's surface that you read, and then you go a little bit deeper. And so it's the 4 levels. I know that.
Right. You're right. You're good. I can handle that. So if you're taking notes, you want to write all this down, okay? So generally, when people are reading the Bible, when people, you get those reading plans from the Bible app, and you're like, yeah, I'm gonna read through the Bible. Generally, you're not supposed to just read the Bible. I know that sounds really, I'm a teacher. You're like, what? I can't believe he just said that. Well, how come you're not supposed to read the Bible? No, you're not really supposed to read it. You're supposed to study it, because you have to, it wasn't written in English. I know we speak that language because we're in the land of our captivity and everything, but you actually have to dig behind the text, find out what's being said, but you have to get it all in. And the first understanding is the straight level, right? The straight level. So last week we talked about the dietary instructions, but by the time we got to the end, I know we got talking on turkey and chicken, and Paul just ruined everybody's lunch, talking about the chicken is a cross between a cockatoo and a vulture, and oh my goodness, I couldn't have my seasoned teriyaki wings no more. But what we realized was, as much as what we're talking about when we talk about the dietary instructions, we're not just talking about food or what you can and can't eat per se. What we're talking about, it had a spiritual implication. So it's like listening, the analogy is, if you listen to music loud, like, I used to rock NWA and Wu-Tang and Biggie and Pac and all that stuff. But if I play that too loud in my Beats headphones, I'm gonna be deaf. I'm not gonna be able to understand tones, and I may be able to hear bass, but I definitely can't hear treble because I've listened to that. Well, it's the same principle. I corrupt my nefesh when I consume unclean foods. So we got some comments in the chat. Let's see what we got. Sister Ya said, I'm still eating my chicken. You better eat it, girl. I'm just teasing. All right. Yes, Nadia, it's like cognitive dissonance, most definitely. All right. All right. Now we getting into some study. Y'all asked for a knife and a fork to cut this word up, and I'm giving it to you. All right. So
did you say what the levels were, or are these the levels?
That's what I'm about to get into.
Okay.
So all right. So a lot of times when you'll hear me have a discussion with somebody, I'll talk about what's called scriptural jurisprudence. This passage is obviously familiar, but it's Isaiah 28, 9 through 10. So this is how you're supposed to understand or perceive. It says, whom shall he teach knowledge? And whom shall he make to understand doctrine? Them that are weaned from the milk and drawn from the breast. For precept must be upon precept, precept upon precept, line upon line, line upon line, here a little and there a little. So obviously in your own leisure time, go back and get the whole context. But what we're talking about is, how is someone supposed to understand something? How is someone supposed to perceive something? How do they read? How do they interpret? How do they understand? So it's very, very important that you go line upon line and precept upon precept. Now, the levels that I talked about, this is just an acronym, PARDS, PRDS. So the first level is obviously your Peshat. That's the plain and simple meaning. So when for example, the Most High says, thou shalt not have any other gods before me. The obvious Peshat rendering of that is clear as day. Don't have any other gods before him, right? But now watch this. That's the straight meaning. So, but there's another level after that. It's called remez. So a lot of times when people are trying to go deep and try to have some type of, they're trying to get a revelation, they will skip the pashat meaning of a text, and they'll go for remez or the drash, right? They're trying to go because they want to bring out something that nobody's ever heard before and everything like that. But you can't get to these levels without acknowledging or having a clear understanding of the pashat level. So, for example, last week we talked about the dietary instructions. I cannot tell you how deep something like Leviticus 11 and 43 is without explaining why you can't eat pork chops and ham hocks and fatback. I can't tell you that. I can't tell you about how deep the rabbit hole goes unless you understand why you can't eat shrimp, crab, and lobster. You have to know that you can't do that because you won't understand what's really being said unless you can acknowledge the Peshat rendering. So the remez obviously means it's like a hint or allusion in the text, like what is the text hinting at or alluding to? The drash is a metaphor, comparison, or illustration through a teaching. So what is the drash meaning? So something like, let me give you a good one. The story, the parable of the prodigal son, right? Obviously, that's a parable or like a metaphor. What you should be asking? It sounds like a pretty cool story, but what you should really be asking is, what is the Mashiach telling us? And then if you know, obviously, your Torah and your prophets, you know that that's alluding to Ezekiel 37 in the Valley of Dry Bones. So that would be your drash rendering of something like that. Then you have your sod. Your sod. That's a mysterious or hidden meaning behind the text. Something that is esoteric per se. Something that's not, it's almost like it's there. It's kind of like being in a hallway, and there's a door with a light behind it, and the door is cracked open a little bit, and you're peeking what is really behind that door. That's what your sod is. But you can't get here until you get to here, Peshat, Remez, and Drash. And you can't ignore all those just so you can be deep and tell somebody, yeah, the Gentiles Paul was preaching to was really Israelite. No, that's not, because that would be ignoring the straight meaning, the Remez, and the Drash. You see what I'm saying? You can't ignore all these just to think that to be deep. No, you can't do that. You've got to acknowledge the Peshat, the Remez, and the Drash. So let me see. Did anybody have questions on that?
And will all of this be in Isaiah 28, 9, 10, kind of explaining it? Or
yes. But again, that's something that you have to read the entire context. And I'm glad you asked that question, Sister Cook, because a lot of times what people do is you can't soundbite. I want to make that perfectly clear, crystal clear, because a lot of times people they got that in Christianity. They soundbite a verse, they soundbite Paul or whoever. And then they think that they have the understanding of what is being said, and you don't, because you sound bit that. The Torah and the scriptures don't allow for sound biting at all, because once you get to somebody like the writings of Peter, the writings of Matthew, Paul, James, John, or whoever, they're assuming when they're saying thus it is written or it is written or anything like that, they're assuming that you've read the entire manuscript, the entire scriptures. We already alluded into the last couple lessons that the scriptures are plain. So when you read the New Testament, that's not really scripture like that. Not like Torah and prophets. It's not. So when Christ is walking the earth, he's not quoting Paul because it wasn't written yet. It's not scripture. So the scripture is God breathed. So you got to go back to Torah, prophets, and writings to know what he's talking about. You have to have a thorough knowledge. And I see some of y'all looking at me, whenever you read somebody like Paul and he's quoting something, he's assuming he's a rabbi. So he's assuming you've read the entire text. the entire thing. So keep that in mind. That's why he can say in something like Romans chapter 7, I'm speaking to you, to those that know the law or know the Torah. So he's assuming you not just have read what it pertains to as pertaining to marriage, like thou shalt not commit adultery, but you should know the entire thing that he's talking about. There were no chapters and verses. That didn't happen till hundreds of years later. These were all written on scrolls. So you got to read the whole book of Isaiah. You got to read the whole book of Jeremiah. You got to read the whole book of Ezekiel. You got to read the whole book of Deuteronomy or Devarim. You got to read the whole thing. So yeah, excellent question. Yes, it's in the entire context, Sister Cook, of Isaiah 28. But you'll read a couple, like a verse ahead of this, and it's talking about the whole tables are full of vomit, right? Talking about people, it's like baby talk, because really, when you read this in Hebrew, this is like it sounds like gibberish. Remember, we're talking, like there's a verse after this talk about with stammering lips and another tongue will I speak to this people. We was in the apostolic church, you know, we take it to the Tarian room, and you got to say hallelujah a million miles an hour, and then you got the elder in your ear talking about you got it. No, you don't have it. That's not it at all. So when it's talking about stammering lips, it's talking about baby talk gibberish. So when you read this in Hebrew, and I know Brother Paul takes a class at Hebrew Academy of Detroit, so they automatically, he's probably looked at this verse in Hebrew, right? The word for precept. Well, actually, I'm not going to give it to you. Does anybody know the Hebrew word for precept in this passage? If you don't know, it's totally cool. Anybody? Okay, it's all right. So Hebrew word is zal. So it basically means command, right? So look at it like this when you're reading it. Whom shall he teach knowledge? And I see you, Sister Yah, with your hand up. Whom shall he teach knowledge? And whom shall he make to understand doctrine? Them that are weaned from the milk and drawn from the breast. Meaning, you're not going to understand something if you're still nursing, because you don't have teeth. You don't have the chops to understand anything about anything prophetical, or that's not even a word, but prophecy and like that. You're not going to understand that because you don't have the chops to even understand that, because you're still at the breast like that. You're still being weaned, right? For command must be upon command upon command. So you can't ignore the commandments and think you got revelation. It just don't work that way. You can't, because you won't understand how can you understand what is sold or drashed and you have ignored the peshat? That makes no sense, right? All right, command must be upon command, line upon line or measuring line. The commandments are the measuring line. So if you don't understand the commandments and how they are written, there's no way you're going to understand what's being said. Case in point, I gave you guys a couple weeks ago, I gave you guys like a devotional of Matthew chapter 15, verses 1 through 20. And generally when people read that, they're like, see, it's not what goes into your mouth that defiles you, but what comes out. So I can eat my pork chops, my ham hocks. I can eat my chitlins. Don't tell me about my chitlins. All I got to do is put some pepper on it and some hot sauce. So it's not unclean because it's not what goes in, it's what comes out. That's why you have to go have scriptural jurisprudence. That's why, because how in the world is that true when you read, and Paul brought this up, if that's true and it's not what goes into your mouth that defiles you, but what comes out, then how come you don't see people eating cardboard boxes, broken glass, or anything like that? Because technically I should be able to chew that broken glass and swallow it and then not cut up my esophagus. But that's not the case. Furthermore, if we're talking about swine or anything unclean, if that's the case, the Most High would be unrighteous in sending judgment upon those that consume swine flesh in the prophecy of Isaiah 66, 15 through 17. He would be completely unrighteous. Now I got hands up. I got to respond to him. Let's see. Sister Ya, you had your hand up first. Go ahead.
Yeah, I did, because as you start to speak, it really took me back to my childhood when you start speaking about tongues. So I didn't say that. I went to, I am a third generation Christian church Disciples of Christ member. I'm not going to go into what that is. That would have to be when we're sitting down eating, because I've always had to explain what that meant. But here's the deal. I didn't understand tongues until I was in my late teens, because tongues was nothing that we did at our church. And then this little girl, though, I used to babysit these two girls across the street, and they went to Grace. And this is why I thought about it, because they said, "Do you know how to speak in tongues?" And I was like, "No." And they said, "What you do is you say, 'Thank you, Jesus, thank you, Jesus,' real fast. You keep on saying it, and then you're speaking in tongues."
Yeah.
And that's because that's what they saw, and that's what happened. And I didn't know if that's what I thought. That's how you spoke in tongues. So I used to go home and practice. But it's so funny. But as an adult, I understood what tongues were, and I also understood you needed to have an interpreter. So whenever I went to this church with this girl one time, and they were all speaking in tongues, I was looking at them like, "What in the world?" And they looked at me like I was a heathen. I looked at them like, "I don't know what y'all saying, and ain't nobody telling me what you're saying. So where's the edification?" So the scripture is just so crazy. I mean, it's so crazy that when you mentioned what you said, that all flashed back in my mind. Just wanted to add that.
Thank you. Yes. And let's see. Somebody who was brought up like me, Ak Rodney, you had your hand up, bro. Go ahead. You there, Ak Rodney? Okay. Let's see. Yeah. Okay, I see his comment in the chat. Some don't believe other Elohims exist. He wrote situational letters, not scripture. Yes, absolute facts. So yes, and I'm going to look while we got this slide up. See if we got any comments or questions in the chat on Facebook. Shabbat shalom, everybody that's watching online. Pastor Johnson says holiness is not man-made. However, the teachings were man-made. Exactly. Yep. Somebody I went to school with, Robert Gillespie said, from milk to meat. Absolutely. Moreh Darren said, holiness involved in my household growing included resting on Sunday, not being able to play sports if it was on the same night of service. Absolutely. So, yep, you grew up like me. I couldn't do certain things. If it messed with Sunday school, me attending, then no, I couldn't do it. Let's see. Robert, we can get you the information for the next class if you'd like to be involved. Yeah. Rick, shot, etc. Yes. I can send you the list, Darren. And okay. All right. So we had a couple people with hands up. Let me see if I can find them. Is that Sister Pat? Go ahead.
My concept of holiness, I grew up in a Catholic church situation. So all of this is, I didn't find out about what it really meant until I was grown, because our concept of holiness was just the priests and the fathers in the church teaching us everything. We never knew what scripture was or what it meant. We just had to go by what they said, because to us, they were the epitome of holiness.
Right. And okay, so this is gonna sound. Were you done, Sister Pat?
I'm done.
Okay, so this is gonna sound I don't want it to sound harsh, but it's just the reality of it. But that model that Sister Pat explained within the being brought up Catholic, that manifests into the Protestant churches, because generally, if you talk to a person who is a real, I'm talking about a real Catholic, not somebody that goes to mass like twice a year. I'm talking about somebody who practices Catholicism. They believe that obviously Protestant churches they're still Catholic because you keep the same festival days. So you still celebrate Lent, you still do Easter, you still do Christmas and all that other stuff. So that's something that, even though I didn't grow up Catholic, I had the same experience, because we're taught not to really question the pastor, or that they know, or the elders or the reverends, because they definitely know more than us. So why would I ever question that? Not realizing that you have to use proper scriptural jurisprudence. And if you're not doing that, then we have a serious problem. All right. Let me see. Marco, you had your hand up. Go ahead, bro.
Yeah, I find that interesting. Because I mean, that's one of my questions. Like, even on here, it seems like many people have different denominations. You're supposed to serve one God, so where all these denominations come from? So that was my biggest issue.
Yeah. So that's something that we all, I think everybody in our class, we all came out of different backgrounds, but it was never designed to be that way. I mean, even if we all are carrying the same exact book, I mean, regardless, for all intent, y'all already know how I am. I push you guys to study and get behind the text. So if you're reading, all you're reading is English, you're not really going to understand what's truly being said. But let's just say, for example, if we're reading is the King James Bible, right? We should all generally come out with the same basic understanding. But what you have with denominationalism is you have where this one goes against this one because of this belief, and this one, you're not saved because you don't do it like this. It shouldn't be that way. And the whole reason being, within religion, especially Christianity, and fact check me, class, if you ignore the Torah, if you ignore the first 5 books, then you can't build a solid foundation if you destroy what it was built on. You can't really build a house starting at the top. No house that I know of, they start in the attic. It just doesn't work that way. So yeah. All right, so we're gonna move on from this. All right. Yay. A test. The first test that I've given in the class. Woo. All right, what do you see? I want to know what you're seeing. What do you see?
The sky.
It looks like a cloud, and then it looks like water.
Okay.
I see expansion.
Wait, you see what now?
Expansion.
Who's that talking?
Sonia.
Uh-oh, Sister Cook. Expansion. Yeah. Now look, I see Tribe Waddell looking at it. Tribe Waddell's looking at it. What do y'all see?
I see the boat in the water, but I see the reflection of the sky in the water.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute,
I got it.
Hold on, wait a minute. Hold on, Sister Pat.
Okay.
Now, Tasha, repeat what you said.
I see the boat on what looks to be water, because if you look under the boat, you see the waves and the reflection of the boat, but then yet you can see the sky above. So you know that the sky is above, and the clouds are upside down, so you're seeing the reflection of the sky in the water.
Interesting. Now, Sister Pat, what'd you have?
Wouldn't it be like an optical illusion?
Woo, y'all just love using these big words. All right, so check this out. So everybody was right. This is not a person. This is an actual picture. Okay.
Beautiful.
But if you, Sister Tasha was right. So obviously, because you see the ripples in the water, this is all water. Mm-hmm. But what we got is we have a reflection So we started off with a quote from in the Torah from Leviticus 19:2. Do y'all remember that?
Mhm.
So let's see if we can go back. There it is. Speaking to all the congregation of the children of Israel and saying to them, you shall be holy, for I, Yahuwah, thy Elohim, am holy. So there should be like some type of reciprocity. There should be something where because he's expecting that from us. There should be a reflection. So it's almost like a mirror. So what he declares and what he says to us, he's saying it's possible because I am. It's not hard. So we're digging into some deep waters because what we thought holiness was, it wasn't what it was about. It was actually speaking to something different. Leviticus 19:4. Ooh. Let's see. Turn ye not unto idols, nor make to yourselves molten gods. I am Yahuwah Elohim. Again, that's Leviticus 19:4. So turn ye not unto idols. You're not supposed to be turning to idols. Common sense, right? Like, duh. I don't think anybody would make a golden calf or bring Dagon into your house or anything and start bowing down to worshiping it. But what is really being said? What's the Most High saying? Remember, when we go back, we're looking at a reflection. We're looking at something, as Sister Pat mentioned, like an optical illusion. Something, what is it really being said? Because it almost looks like the boat is in the sky. Watch this. It almost looks like you can't tell where heaven begins and the earth begins. Where does heaven end, or the earth end and heaven begin? You really can't tell because they look like they're connected. Interesting. Now we got some comments in the chat. Let's see what we got. Reflection, Sister to me. Yes. Oh, Christopher, welcome. Shabbat Shalom. Yes, everything we need to know is in Genesis or Bereshit.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, Maki. Paul says, if the foundation is destroyed, what shall the righteous do? Woo, you preaching, brother, you preaching. Yes. So this Hebrew word is called panah. Panah. That's a pay, a noon, and a hey. So to turn to and focus attention. Also being contrary to, contrary. You know, if you had a grandmother from the South, you know, you was acting up, she told you being contrary. Pei obviously is the mouth in ancient Hebrew. The noon is a seed or continuance, and hey is revelation. In the Septuagint, it mentions following. Thus, in context, this turning is changing of relationship, a change of relationship. So remember, he tells you, you know, turn not to idols. So don't turn. So if you turn, it's not just like you're, you know, it's a double meaning. So you can turn to him, like when you say the word teshuva, or you can turn away, like panah, turn away from him. Holiness. So again, I gave you guys Leviticus 19 as like a kind of like a study. This is in the Torah portion that's known as Kodashim. Kodashim. So holiness. So Yahuwah, I broke it in two parts. And most of the class should know where I'm going with this. So parts of Leviticus 19, some of it deals with our relationship with the Most High. So he tells you in verse 3 to keep my Sabbaths. In verse number 12, he tells you do not profane the name of Yahuwah. Right? Don't be, and that connects to the Decalogue or the 10 Commandments. Don't take the name of the Most High in vain or make it shav, right? And then verse 37 says, observe all my statutes and judgments to do them. So those are things that he prerequisites that he asks for you to do. These are direct statements and from the Most High Yahuwah, right? But then there are other parts. So that's the thing that your day-to-day living, you interacting with other people, or your neighbors. Leave the corner gleanings of your field for the poor and stranger, right? So you were commanded when you start harvesting your field and you start reaping things, don't do the whole field. Leave the corners for the poor and the stranger that would come by and like the disciples did, where they picked the corn on the Sabbath day and they rolled them in the hands to get the corn off, right? Don't steal, lie, or deal falsely with one another. Also, that's common sense. Don't be lying to people. Don't be stealing from your neighbor. Don't deal falsely with them. But don't put a stumbling block before them, before the deaf, before the blind, and stuff like that. So don't hurt people. Just common sense, right? Just do the right thing. Verse number 13 in chapter 19 of Leviticus, don't defraud your neighbor or rob him or her. So don't defraud them. Don't do no harm to them. And watch this, verse 34, love thy neighbor as thyself. Y'all, wait a minute. Some of y'all just thought that was New Testament only. Nope, that's in the Torah. So if you do away with the Torah, you do away with loving your neighbor as yourself. So you're not supposed to do that. So Rodney, you got your hand up. Go ahead, bro.
Yes. I'm not going to disrupt the class. I do wonder something though, because when we study holiness, we understand that those are the biblical standards that Yah put out there for us, and we understand that. We can read that in the Word. I guess the thing that it's a simple question, but it's also seems complicated to me. About how did we as the people, how did we get so? How is it that we misunderstand what's plainly written in front of us? How did that happen? I think I know the answer to that, but what is it that has put us in a position that the things that are plainly seen, they're like fresh revelations when we learn, when we go back to, we go back to Yah, we learn the word over again. How is it that we're so misconstrued? 40,000 Christian denominations, and everybody has a different take on what's plainly written.
Okay, that's a really good question. So I think that, and I'm sure pretty much everybody that's watching online, they have their own opinion, but the reality of it is, for us, I'm speaking directly to the Bantu descendants. We were told what was viable and what was not viable. We were told not to read certain things because it didn't pertain to us. We were told all you got to worry about is Jesus and you're good. Just be filled with the Spirit, run around the church and all that. But you don't have to read the Old Testament. It's old. They call it old for a reason. So if you got a fresh pair of Jordans, what do I need with the Jordan 1s? What do I need those for when I got the Jordan 11s? What in the world would I need that for? These Jordan, whatever the model they have now, these are newer. So what do I need? What came first? Not realizing that if you just, as Paul mentioned, you destroy the foundation, you take away that, then it changes the way you perceive the scriptures. So what happens is, and really what I'm talking about is the writings of the so-called New Testament. So when you read somebody like Paul, the Apostle Paul, and he's talking about things like Romans 6:14, I'm not under the law, but under grace. You're not under the law, not under grace. Well, because you don't have the chops or the teeth to chew what he's talking about, you're going to choke on that. And you're going to think that you don't have to do anything. You were completely free to do whatever you want. And that is not what the scripture teaches, because if you knew the context, you would know he's talking about the law of sin. right? So, but without the teeth to understand that, then you have all these different things that come into play, especially when it comes down to us, because there's a saying, sadly, that if you want to hide something from a black person, you put it in a book, because black folks don't read. So, and that's a sad statement, but the reality of it is we've been conditioned not to study, not to read, not to dig, not to research, not to study heritage, history, culture. We've been conditioned for that. So to overcome that, you actually have to dig, you have to remove and pull back layers. Make sure you guys mute your mics so we don't have any backfeed. But we've been conditioned for that. We've been conditioned for that. So what we have to do is pull back the layers and be willing to acknowledge that, okay, if I say that I believe in Jesus and I believe, if you're ignorant of his Hebrew name, and if I say that I believe in him and I want to love him and I'm filled with the Spirit, what was the purpose of the Spirit? What was the design of it? Why did God want to fill you with his Spirit? Well, if you knew the scriptures, you know that the whole purpose for him filling you with the Spirit was for you to keep his commandments. That was the whole point. You can find that in Jeremiah 31, 33 to 34, 31 to 34. You can find that in Ezekiel 36, 25 to 27. So that was the whole point of you being filled with the Spirit, to have your heart circumcised, what the Torah says, was for you to walk in his ways. That's it. So you can't really say that you follow the Messiah, but you don't do what he says. He says in John 14 and 15, if you love me, you will keep my commandments. As there's a teaching, there's a Moreh is doing a class on 1 John. And there's a chapter number 2 of 1 John talks about if you say that you love him and you following him and you're not keeping his commandments, you're a liar and the truth is not in you. So we have to get back to that and be willing to just admit that we've been there are certain things that we inherited that were great, wonderful. I appreciate my upbringing, but certain things they didn't tell me who I was, especially my heritage. And that's what we have to regain back, because we are the people of the book. Rodney, you raise your hand again. So okay, let's see. We have more hands up, I think. Sister Marcia, go ahead.
I just wanted to say that one of the reasons why we didn't go and dig into the Old Testament is because we were told that it was concealed. That the only thing that they would basically pull out of the Old Testament was stories. But the way that they lived is now concealed. We no longer follow anything as far as living in the Old Testament. So it's basically shut up. That's what they taught. Well, the old Pentecostal apostolics said that the Old Testament is concealed as of now.
Right. So make sure I'm not. Yeah. So exactly. So that's one of those things where we have to actually dig into the text and be. I see your hand, Paul. Dig into the text. We were told that we were given generally things that make us feel good. So generally, I'm telling you, if people were having church tomorrow, they're giving feel good messages. There are people posting on social media, I can't wait to get back to church so I can run around. It sounds like it's almost like they're missing a high. You know what I'm saying? They're missing a hit. They're missing something because they miss being able to run around, and they haven't. This is a time when he's separated you and allowed you, okay, no social distance. You want to be social distance. You don't want to be around people, and people don't know how to handle it because they haven't developed any teeth. They haven't been weaned from the milk and drawn from the breast. They're still getting these sermonettes on the passages from Paul, and they don't know how to deal with it. They don't know how to deal. Woo! I'm excited. I feel good. Ooh, I want to shout. I want to run. I want to slap my neighbor, high fives, and turn to your neighbor. And they've had all them look, junk food. They've been eating junk food all this time, and now they actually have to dig into the text. They have to actually open it, and they don't know how to read. I'm not talking about reading, just reading. I'm talking about interpreting, understanding, line upon line, precept upon precept. They don't know how to do that. And that is sad because your pastor is supposed to teach you how to do that. What I'm teaching when we're going through, let's see. So because I'm sharing my screen. When we're going through things like scriptural jurisprudence, your pastors are supposed to be teaching you that. You should have learned that in church. You should have, and I'm not talking about from a Hebraic perspective per se right now. I'm just talking about he should have taught you how to read. He should have taught you how to study. He should have taught you how to use a concordance. He should have taught you how to dig into the language because they weren't speaking English. He should have automatically taught you that. And if he didn't, then that's something that is necessary. That's something that's necessary. So if all you're hearing is New Testament, all you're hearing is story, like Marcia said, stories from the Old Testament, you're hearing about Noah's Ark, you're hearing about David and Goliath, you're hearing about David and Jonathan, you're hearing about Saul, you're hearing about the Psalms, Psalm 23. That's all you're getting is that the stories, but you're not getting what they were living, how they were moving, what the Most High wasn't pleased with. If you're not getting that, how do you even have the chops to understand what somebody like Jesus is saying in the New Testament? You know, and I use the name Jesus, you know, just so for relatability, right? How are you going to know what's being said when you haven't studied the word? You've never studied. Or as I often quote from the movie The Matrix, Neo asks, why do my eyes hurt? And what does Morpheus say? Because you've never used them before. You've never studied. You've never been given the tools that you need to actually understand what's being said. Now I got some hands up. Let's see if I can get to them. We got some good stuff. Oh, actually, Paul, you had your hand up. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
But you covered just about everything I was going to say. And you know, in addition, you know, you got to understand that going back to how do you study the scriptures and the jurisprudence of it, you know, most Christians are on the on the Passat, the plain and simple. And without going any further than that, they will lose the content and the meaning because you're looking at it from a Septuagint purview, meaning that, you know, it's the Hebrew that is translated into Greek and you're reading it from the Greek version. And if you separate the culture from the word from the culture, then you won't get the meaning. And so here again, you know, it's about jurisprudence of the scriptures.
Exactly. And that's when I use that phrase often because a lot of times people they and this is a lesson we can really dig into and go heavy. I know people online are probably wondering, okay, well, I've never heard that phrase before, but I'm sure Paul and Rodney and some of the others in the class know you heard of a man named Marcion. And if you haven't heard of him, write the name down, Marcion, Marcion. Marcion was for lack of better words, like a bitheist. So he believed in two different gods, the God of the Old Testament and the God of the New Testament, right? So that's why you had that flap in between your Protestant 66, between Malachi and Matthew. And then they tell you, well, there was 400 years of silence. And not nowhere in the text does it say that there was 400 years of silence, but you've been fed the same regurgitated lies and you believe it and then preach it on Sunday morning. No, that's not true. So Rodney, you got your hand up?
Yes. I just wanted to say, give me 1 second, please. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to point. I remember you all touched on pretty much anything I was going to say except one thing. It's funny that you alluded to how church is. And I hate to sound like I just bang on the church because I grew up in the church like most people, and I love it for that purpose. But this week I was just doing more study on the word church, circus, and I started to see how much first time I really thought about how much church was like a circus. How it's just so many things going on. You look at the cults that existed back in the day, different things going on, and it's even if our pastors and people didn't know it, that's what they were actually giving us was something other than what God ordained to have as service for his people.
Right. So for those that don't know what Brother Rodney's saying, so do your own research now. Study the origin of the word church, because really, what you have in it, what the so-called New Testament, the word that should be there is ecclesia, right, or set apart assembly, right? But they put church in there, and when you study the etymology of the word church, it comes from a word kirke, or some CIRCE or KIRKE. But we're talking about a circus, a circle, things like that, something that's round. And when you think about it, it comes from like the name of a Greek goddess, right? But most people don't, they never studied that. And obviously we talked about this in the Q&A session last week, I think, but Kirke obviously was in the book, The Odyssey by Homer. And you're wondering why when you go into a church, the way it's designed, it doesn't matter what denomination it is. I'm talking about the building, right? Because I believe it's, correct me, Paul, if I'm wrong, but I think it's like Acts 7:48, I think. The Most High doesn't dwell in temples made with hands. Ding, ding, ding. You're aching to go back to church, but you think he's there, but he doesn't dwell in a temple made with hands. But generally, most churches are set up, the pulpit is like a semicircle. So Rodney's hitting the nail on the head, so to speak. So that's why we have to go deeper, because it's about your relationship with the Most High. The church isn't going to be able to save you like that. And I know it sounds kind of hard, but it's just the facts. You have to have your own relationship with him. Mom and daddy's relationship with him ain't gonna save you. So let's see. All right. Kodash, or watch this, Kodesh. Kodesh. That's a Kof, a Dalet, and a Shin. Kof, Dalet, Shin. So obviously reading right to left. Let's see. You shall, and this is just a few examples. You shall be Kodash or Kodesh, for Kodesh I am. Remember? Leviticus 19:2. And ye shall be unto me a kingdom of priests, a holy nation. These are the words which thou shalt speak unto the children of Israel. Exodus 19:6. Leviticus 11:45. For I am Yahuwah, who elevates you from the land of Egypt to be Elohim unto you. You shall be Kadesh or Kadash, for I am holy. I am Kadash. As obedient children, and do not be participants again with those former lusts with which you lusted when you were without knowledge, or when without knowledge, but you be set apart, or Kadash, in all your conduct. So sister, when we opened, Sister Cook talked about your conduct, how you behaved. You wanted to be holy and how you behave. So she was kind of alluding to this. As he is set apart, who has called you, because it is written, be you Kadash, even as I am Kadash, or Kodesh. So remember, we're talking about, when people talk about the Holy Ghost in the church, they say Holy Ghost, but really the Most High isn't a ghost, because a ghost is a malevolent spirit. Or people say Holy Spirit, but really the Hebrew word is Ruach HaKodesh, or the spirit, the set apart spirit, the set apart spirit. So that's what we're talking about. Kadash, to be holy, or Kadash means to be set apart. The word comes from a root, Kaf Dalet Shin, which means to be prepared for a task, as well as to dedicate all resources. Interestingly, the same thing can be said for an immoral person. When a person continues in sin in whatever form, they are set apart from Elohim. They're set apart from him. Kof, the horizon, Dalet, the door, Shin, to crush. The opposite, you will be separated from the entrance and be set behind. Holiness can also imply a fencing or separation, like to dedicate. One who is set apart for righteousness guards themselves from that which could potentially contaminate him or her. Also, as stated earlier, the opposite implies that an immoral person has fenced themselves from righteousness. So generally, a person that's trying to live set apart, they already have in their mind, I can't go to this place because I don't want to mingle myself. It's ironic how all this kind of ties back to the dietary instructions, because technically, if you had example, if you had a clean meat, let's just say you had a lamb, but it was touching or intermingled with pork, you're technically not supposed to eat that because it's touched something that's unclean. It's not kadash or it's not, watch this, it's not kosher anymore because it's been intermingled, it's been touched, it's been mishandled, and you weren't supposed to do that. There has to be a separation between clean and unclean. So you'll see sometimes, if you ever go, when they open restaurants back up, people that they don't eat, well, actually, I'm trying to think. It was a restaurant who they came out with a new vegan meal or something like that, but people found out that they were preparing it on a grill where they were grilling meat. And technically, vegans don't do that because they don't eat any type of meat, right?
It was a Burger King vegan burger.
Vegan burgers, right. So technically, they weren't all the way vegan because they had touched meat, right? So it's the same principle, but it's just different. Do we have any questions on Facebook? Okay, that's okay. That's all right. I'll look. So do we have any questions in the class before I look at the questions on Facebook? Let's see. I see Robert looking. He had a question. Would some of this come from Proceeds 1 and 6 as well? That's probably Proverbs. Okay, we'll look into that, Robert, at the end. Proverbs 1 and 6. Let's see. Sister Joanna says, "Come on, facts." Shabbat shalom, sis. Pat Brown says, "Shalom." Shabbat shalom, brother. Pastor Johnson's are not tongues an outward manifestation of the Ruach? Yes. Shabbat shalom, Terrell Powers. Let's see. Christian is built on the sand. Water and Shamayim. Yep. Sister Johnson. Tower of Babel. Oh, that was a good one, Robert. Pat talks about Psalm 83 and 3. Nicole, Shabbat shalom. So yes. So we're getting into some good heavy stuff, you guys. Badal. Woo! Now I know, Sister Marcia, do you know what this means? See if I can pull you up in the class. There we go. Badal. Wait a minute, you're on mute. Let me get you. There you go.
Huh. It is the 10th. I'm not sure.
Okay, that's all right.
I'm not even gonna mess it up.
That's all right. So I did a teaching on holiness, right? About a year ago, maybe. And I brought up this word, badal, right? So reading right to left, remember? So you got your bait. So you kind of like in the vein, Sister Marcia. Your bait is your house, remember? Your dalet is your door, and your lamet is your shepherd staff. So badal, right?
I was gonna say that, but I wasn't sure if you wanted me to say it in Paleo Hebrew or not. I wasn't sure.
No, you would have been, hey, you guys, when I'm posting this stuff and I'm putting it in modern Hebrew, if you know, this is why I do this, because I want you to be familiar with the modern Hebrew, because everybody doesn't, we're waking up and we're using a lot of the ancient Hebrew, and that's great, and I love it. But a lot of times you're not going to see, you need to learn the modern so you know the sequence, because you need to at least know the symbols, right? You need to be familiar with it. So badal, right? Beit dalet shin. Beit dalet shin. Got some activity in the chat. Paul says, woo! Paul, separation means also to divide. Woo, Paul, you're batting 1,000, my brother. Yes. To divide. All right. Let's see. All right. Now watch this. This is gonna be intense. Now you gotta pay close attention. All right. You shall badal, which I have badal. Yahuwah Elohim. Remember, like we're getting into it in Leviticus 20 and 25. But to badal, we're getting into some deep stuff now, because when we're talking about holiness, it's not just being set apart and you don't have any responsibility. You actually have to separate yourself. Leviticus 20:25, you shall distinguish or badal between the clean animal and the unclean, between the clean bird and the unclean, and you shall not render your souls or nephesh abominable through such animals and birds, and through anything that creeps on the ground, which I have badal or set apart for you to render unclean. So you were supposed to separate, make a distinction. You have to make a distinguish. So notice, it's in English, it's translated two different ways. That's why you have to dig into the Hebrew. But it's the same word, same Strong's reference and everything. Badal, bait, dalet, lamet. Bait, dalet, lamet. So, and just to write that down, Leviticus 20 and 25. Again, this from the same Torah portion, Kodashim. So to the set apart ones. So it's like if I were to put it in English, this is how set apart people act and behave. You had to be different than everybody else. You were distinguished. In the Holiness Church, what do they tell us? It's 90 degrees outside. Sisters, you better still have on stockings. Put them stockings on. I know it's hot, but you got to be set apart, because your neighbor, they don't wear stockings. Or brothers, I know, look, don't you be wearing them dreadlocks. That's not being set apart. You got to have a low haircut with no designs in it. You know what I'm saying? That was the way we were brought up religiously, but that's not what the scripture says about what it means to be set apart. And we talked about pants earlier, but it's bigger. It's definitely bigger than that. Rodney said, holiness or hell, get right or get left. And they was talking about the rapture. And look, I'm sorry, we've debunked that totally. That's just a miss. That's what happens when you don't understand the scriptures. But yeah, we would definitely be preaching that. Badal is made up of 3 Hebrew letters, beit, dalet, lamet, or house, door, staff. From an ancient perspective, these letters mean to divide or separate from something. Something that comes into the house has to be examined before it even approaches the door by the staff, leadership, or teaching. Also, badal means to separate for a positive purpose. And there's something called, I'm sure Rodney's heard of this, Paul's heard of this, I've taught the class this, I know Marcia knows this, but it's called the law of first mention. So the first rendering of a word helps shed light on the definition of it or the meaning of it. So Badal is first mentioned in Genesis 1:4. And Elohim saw the light, that it was good. And Elohim separated, or Badal, the light from the darkness. So he pulled the light and the darkness away from each other. So he made a separation, and demarcation. Badal. Oh, so oftentimes what happens is when I get asked certain things, they're like, well, what good is knowing all that history and we don't know it? It didn't change what Jesus said. What did Jesus say? What did Jesus say? All right, well, we got to deal with probably the Mashiach's only sermon, his strictest, straightest teaching from the Sermon on the Mountain, or in seminary they say Sermon on the Mount. Yahusha and his teaching. Y'all know this. Everybody should know this verse. Matthew 5:17. Do not think that I've come to loosen Torah or the prophets. I have not come to loosen, but to fulfill them through proper meaning. That's from the Aramaic English New Testament. The law and the prophets. The law and the prophets. Watch this. This is just chapter by chapter. If thy right hand offend thee, cut it off. Cast it from thee. Matthew 5:30, edit. And look at this, the preceding verses. You have heard that it was said by them of old time, thou shalt not commit adultery. But I say unto you, that whosoever looketh on a woman to lust after her hath committed adultery with her already in his heart. Look, I'm still talking about holiness. If your right hand offends you, cut it off. Now watch. Let's see who we got in here. Paul, is he talking about literally cutting off your digits, cutting off your right hand?
No, what he's talking about is to cut it out of your mind. And it goes back to the scripture, cast down all imaginations and every high thing that exalts itself against the knowledge of Yah, and bring into captivity everything into the obedience of Yahushua.
Right, exactly. So good one. So if your right hand offends you or your right eye offends you, you're supposed to pluck it out, because the context is better for you to go into life maimed than for your whole body to be cast into the pit. Or we're not talking about like Hades, but your whole body to be destroyed, right? We're talking about Gehenna, right? You don't want that. You actually want to be saved, and you're willing to, hey, if I have to cut off my hand to get to that place, I'll do it, because I want to be, in the church we would say, I want to be saved. You know what I'm saying? I just want to be, when people say, I just want to be saved. Well, if you want to be saved, you ain't supposed to be looking on a woman to lust after her. Because you know why? Because that's coveting. That's in the commandments. That's coveting. You're not supposed to covet your neighbor's wife, his manservant, maidservant, etc. You're not supposed to do that. That's against the Torah. Now, you were wondering why I picked that picture. Remember with the boat and the reflection? Sister Tasha, Waddell tribe basically dealt with that. What was, it was a reflection. It's showing something above, showing something below. So the Mashiach says this: thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. So the will of the Most High, he wants his will done in you on earth, right? So you're not supposed to, shouldn't be worried about people are preaching about kingdom, and the kingdom is coming, and we're open to doing this and we're doing that. No, what did the kingdom has Torah. The kingdom has instructions. So you need to find out, if I'm gonna have his will done on earth, I need to find out what his will is in heaven. You start studying, look, I could go on and on. I know we're pressed for time, but you'll realize that somebody like Abraham, when it comes down to keeping the feast days and the holy days, He was the first one to celebrate Sukkot. You know, you got to study that though. You think that Abraham wasn't keeping commandments? Check Genesis 26:5. He kept all the commandments. All right, let's see. All right. The light of the body is the eye. If therefore thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be full of light. But if thy eye be evil, thy whole body shall be full of darkness. If therefore the light that is in thee be darkness, how great is that darkness? No man can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will hold to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God or Elohim and Mammon. Sounds pretty. We've heard all this before, but it makes a difference when you know the Torah. You have an understanding of the instructions. All right, getting to the last slides. The two pillars. The two pillars. Excellent. Marco said it will be as the days of Noah, the rapture. Right. So we can deal with that, Marco, if you hang on, because we do Q&A once we get off social media. But yeah, so there's you got to understand what's being said about the days of Noah to understand what it means to be taken and left. Paul says the eye is the window to the soul. Exactly. Talking about being stingy. Talking about not caring for your finances like you're supposed to. So the two pillars, Matthew 22:36-40. The two pillars. Oh boy, now we're getting into it. Teacher, which is the great command in the Torah? And he said to him, you shall love Yahuwah, your Elohim, with all your heart and with all your being and with all your mind. This is the first and great command. And the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commands hang all the Torah and the prophets. As you can see, the teaching of Torah was intricately woven into the ministry of Yahusha. For these two pillars or hangers define everything else within Torah. From these two pillars, we see how we should obey and follow Yahuwah, as well as how we should treat others. We cannot say that we are truly disciples if we don't have love for one another, and we cannot say we love Yah but have hatred or malice toward others. James 2:8-9 says, if you truly accomplish the sovereign law according to the scripture, you shall love your neighbor as yourself, you do well. But if you show partiality, you commit sin, being found guilty by the Torah as transgressors. So you got to actually love the Most High, and you got to love people. Love your neighbor as yourself. And I know people sometimes, well, that's only talking about Israelites. Go back and research the Torah. That's talking about everybody that would come into contact with you that was compliant with the covenant. You were supposed to love them. And that don't mean you're supposed to act ungodly when you're interacting with those of other nations that don't know. How are you supposed to be a light to the nations when you actually full of darkness? Sister Yah, you got your hand up.
So what a lot of people don't realize is that how that relates to the 10 commandments. The first part, loving the Most High with all of your heart, mind, and soul, are the first 3 commandments. And then the second part, and love your neighbor as yourself. Well, if you love your neighbor, you're going to honor your mother and father. You're going to not commit adultery. You're going to do all the rest of them. So that's how the commandments relate to that, even though pastors don't like to connect them together.
Right, exactly. So that's why when you think about it, I think this is my last slide. Yep. So when you think about it, when we're talking about the 2 pillars of the Torah, and the Mashiach basically gives you these pillars, basically what he's doing is all the commandments are linked to each other. So like you can't say, well, if you read Leviticus, you'll understand the ceremonial law. Well, you do have ceremonial law, or the laws that pertain to worship and things like that, and ceremonies, but you also have moral law in there too. You also have civil law in there too. You also have obviously, watch, you have dietary instructions in there too. So these are all woven together. So you can't say, well, I obey the two and that's it. No, you're not really obeying the two, because if you love the Most High, you'll be honoring the Shabbat. If you love the Most High, you won't have other gods before you of wood and stone. If you love your neighbor, you wouldn't be lusting after his property. If you love the Most High, you would keep his dietary instructions. Well, I didn't know. Well, you're watching, you're hearing the word. Now you know you're supposed to be obedient and compliant to the word. We got hands up. Let me see who it is. Boom, boom, boom. Thought we had hands up. Oh, Nadia, there you are. Go ahead.
So I think I answered my own question, but I still want to just put it out there. So your last statement about being within the covenant. So if you love your neighbor as you do yourself, what about murderers and adulterers and transgender people and racists and the LBG community? Like, how do we love those people if they're not within our covenant?
Okay, good question. So first of all, what we're talking about is how we interact. Okay, so just because somebody is outside of the covenant doesn't mean I have to interact with them in a hateful, harsh way. Okay, so it's like as an example. Okay, like I got to give examples. So it's like if you work a job and you work with a racist. Now you don't know per se that they have racist feelings, but you still gotta get a job done. You know what I'm saying? You still in those situations, you have to still be able to show the light of the Most High in what you're doing. That doesn't mean you're compliant with their behavior, that you're agreeable and you're permitting their behavior, because we already know, like, we have to live a certain way, be in the world but not of it, right? But at the same time, you have to be willing to showing the this is such a good question. So showing the love of the Most High doesn't mean that you're compliant with the behavior, because a lot of times that's what religions do. I won't just say churches, I'll say religions. So they'll pat people on the back like, oh, it's okay, God loves you and he knows your heart and everything. And then they don't say anything about the sin. The sin is not mentioned, not realizing that he's not cool with a lot of things that people are doing. There won't be any racists in we say heaven, like we're talking about, that's a whole nother lesson. Paul already knows where I'm going. The kingdom comes down. We don't go, but anyway, like we pat people on the back as if we're compliant. Oh, it's okay. God knows your heart. And for God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten son. And they're still sinning. They still a dude and got a boyfriend, or they're still a girl and got a girlfriend. And y'all, look, we're all adults. Y'all know what we're talking about. So no, that's not how that you're ignoring the Torah, right? So what you do is you live the life before people. That's really what holiness, that's what the lesson is about. You live the life before people, and then they can see it and they're like, wait a minute, there's something different about Nadia, because like she has a lifestyle about her. And I'm sure in the business world, like they talk about modeling behavior, right? Like you model traits. People, if you want to see some be something, or you see somebody doing what you want to be doing, you try to model their behavior, right? So in this sense, we should be such a light. We're the Mashiach calls us the salt of the earth, right? So if we're the salt of the earth, we affect everything in our environment. So like people that interact with me on my job, that they knew me before like my awakening, but even before that, I wasn't cussing and stuff. You know what I'm saying? So when they get around me, they don't cuss. They don't. You know what they'll say? They'll say Rev is in the room. Don't be cussing, and then they'll get mad at somebody else. They'll be like, "Shh, don't say that word. Rev is in the room." You know what I'm saying? Because I've been, I'm not saying I'm perfect, but what I'm saying is like we should affect change in our environments, right? We should affect change. So I hope that answered your question because we got to dig into it in the Q&A because it's heavy, but we should be alike. So somebody like people that are transgendered or gay is like a loose word, but like or anybody else that is outside of covenant because those are two things, but it's massive. There are murderers, people that are thieves, drunkards, and all that stuff. You still got to show the love of the Most High to them, but it's not really showing them the love of the Most High by patting their sin on the back and saying, oh, it's okay. He knows. No, he knows that your heart is deceitfully wicked above all things. So we can't sugarcoat it, but we also can't be hateful in how we do it. You know what I'm saying? Like we thought, look, I came out of the apostolic church. I thought when I preached hellfire and brimstone, I was being loving. Selah. I thought when I was preaching hard on them, boy, they better repent or else God is going to get them. Jesus is going to come back in the rapture and they're going to be left here. Yeah. Okay. And I didn't realize that, you run people away like that and you're not supposed to do that. Because when they see you, they should see the Mashiach. But a lot of people can't take that. Mashiach went, had a dinner with some publicans and sinners. He went in and they talked about him. Look, he's with publicans and sinners. He's got a Beelzebub. He does all these things. Hey, people are gonna talk about you either way. So you might as well get talked about for doing the right thing. So
yeah, I asked the question because there was a post on Facebook and it was a while ago, but it was about the athlete who was advocating for his son to become a girl. And I just was like, that's not right. And so people came for me, but, as a teacher, as a child of the Most High, like you still have, I'm not going to hate those people because of the decisions. There's been so much in the world that is addressing our Black and brown men to become women and, I can't think of the right word right now, but it's all a part of something else. Right. And you just have to spread the knowledge that, yes, I still love you, but this is not a good decision. This is the wrong decision. So
right, it's the feminization of our Black men. So yes. Basically, what happens is if you know that everybody in this room knows this, everybody watching on social media knows this, but you got to realize that the media will have you believe in every person of color got the coronavirus. We're the only ones dying of coronavirus. We're out. We're sexual deviants, and we rob people. We steal. Put your lock your door, sis. When the brothers walk by, we'll take your purse and all this stuff. And you have to have you believing that we're the enemy. And then the other part of that is they feminize us. So a lot of things you have on television is Black men kissing other Black men or other men or whatever, you know what I'm saying? Or we're metrosexuals and all this stuff. And where did the bros from the 50s, what happened to them? What happened? You research, and I know Paul knows this. Everybody, if you study quote unquote Black history as it pertains to our men, you go back 50, 60 years ago, you didn't have that. You really didn't have that. But you get after the deaths of somebody like Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, you get into the 70s, you get into the 80s with the crack epidemic, and then the war on drugs. They had to get here from somewhere. You're getting Pookie and them, locking them up for 40 years for marijuana charge, not realizing Pookie's he's just the corner drug dealer. He don't own no jets. He ain't no billionaire. He didn't ship it from the other countries. Come on. I could go on and on. But Paul, you got your hand up, and I know I don't want to you're up in age, so I want you to hang on to your thoughts. Go ahead.
Yeah, I raised my hand and took it down so many times because there's so many different points that I could speak on. But to Nadia's question, it goes back to really Genesis 3, where the Most High said he was going to put enemy between his seed and the woman's seed and Satan's seed, Hashatan's seed. And from that point on, his design was to pervert the seed. And you see that in Genesis 6. That's what happened in Genesis 6 when the giants came in and took over the world. He had to destroy the world as a result of that. And then as you fast forward, you named several different time periods. You named slavery, where they demasculated us. And then also at that point, they made us less than a man. Then we went through the revolutionary period of the civil rights era, where men wanted to be men, but they understood that if a man and his family stayed together, there was a powerful tool and was a danger to actually the American society, because they wanted to keep us in the slave mindset. The civil rights era was built on families and men in the household. So what did they do? They instituted the welfare, and destroying the family through other means. They took the factories out of our communities in the 70s. So we couldn't be the providers that we were. And as a result of that, they introduced drugs to supplement that. So now, they either locking us up, they either killing us, or either they making us homosexuals. And it's all about perverting the seed. It's all about taking, exactly, so yeah, COINTELPRO. It was always about that. And that just a brief history lesson that I could go really deep into, because I'm from that era. I've seen the transition. I grew up in the 60s, and I saw the civil rights. I saw how we fought to become men. But this generation doesn't have that same desire to become men. And so as a result of that, it's easy to pick them off by introducing the drugs and the different things that the media, the music, the rap, and all of that to distort our view of who we are of ourselves. And if we don't know who we are, then they're going to define that for us.
Exactly. Thank you, Brother Paul. And something that I got you, Christopher, I see your hand up. So, and something that we should all know this, but they would break our men in front of our women. Y'all remember if y'all read that, like they called it, I believe, buck breaking, where they would rape our men in front of their children. You know what I'm saying? Just wickedness. And then it does something to the psyche, because it affects the Black woman or the Hebrew woman, because she has to take on a role she was never intended to take on. And then it changes the psyche of the children, because the mother is going to want to protect her seed, protect she definitely wants to protect the female seed, the female child, but she wants to protect that male child. And so again, I mean, it's so much psychological things that were done, and we're just naming a few. We're just naming a few. We haven't even brought up some of I forget her name, the Hollywood actress that adopts two Black boys and got them wearing dresses. Y'all, look.
Charlize Theron.
Yeah.
Charlize Theron.
It doesn't matter. Look, Paul, Chris is in the room. Let me see. Rodney, Marco, y'all in the room. Look, when we were boys, we wasn't thinking about stuff like that. We didn't even look. We were trying to play outside and get dirty. We wasn't thinking about dresses. I wasn't thinking about Barbies. I wasn't thinking about look, we didn't even watch the concept of we knew we were boys, but we didn't even think about girls like that. Wow. Sex like that. You understand? And we live in this over sexualized society. where we sexualize everything. Everything is so horrible now. So, and then you do that, and then it affects how they perceive themselves. And again, you cannot, again, all y'all that watched, oh man, I'm so in the Q&A session right now, but all y'all that watched Hebrews to Negroes, and
Oh my God.
all y'all that we'll get into in the Q&A. Don't, but here's the thing. Like you're not going to learn who you are from the oppressive system.
Right.
They're not going to tell you who you are. So don't expect to hear this from Biden, from Trump, from any of them. They're not going to be like, hey, y'all the Israelites. You're not going to hear it. It's not going to happen. You're not going to hear it from any of their history book, because that's somebody else's story, not yours. But oh man, I can keep going. Look, let me see. Sister Cook. Oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry. Christopher, you had your hand up. My bad. Let me take you off mute. There you go.
There we go. Well, it's as the scripture says, we up against not just flesh and blood, but against principalities and wickedness, spiritual wickedness in high places, right?
Right.
So the brother started on that in Genesis when he talked about the two seeds, right? We've been under assault for thousands of years. Thousands of years. This is just another, now we see the assault for what we're talking about is genocide. It's genocide. It's planned genocide. And this is what we're up against, right? The feminization of Black men. If you notice that the targeting is of Black women, and you see it if you watch television, which I try not to watch, but you see it in every venue. You see now a white dude with a Black woman. It's from the singer from Planned Parenthood to the drugs in the neighborhoods, right? The whole prison industrial system. It's all planned genocide, right? The whole supposition that we find ourselves in right now is how do we deal with this assault, right? It's not just a physical assault, it's a spiritual assault.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So this is the dilemma that we face. Not just to understand that we need to educate our people on spiritual means, but we need to also let them understand that it's also a physical component to this as well, that they have to guard themselves against.
Moreh, you may have to go on, go to question and answers.
Okay.
Right. Hold on.
Because he brought up so much. He brought up so much because if you look at it, the genocide began with the two seeds. Then as you evolve from there, you look at how the Nephilim came and perverted the seed. And then you go from there, you look at how the Pharaoh was killing our young boys from the age of 2 and trying to find a Messiah. Then as you evolve, in every area, in every instance, they chased us out of Jerusalem in 70 AD, destroying, just trying to wipe us off because it was Confederate against us, Psalm 83. Then you look at it, at the migration of that to slavery, and as we get into slavery, how they beat, hung, and did those atrocities according to Deuteronomy 28. And then you think about how from that point on, there was the hangings and stuff after Reconstruction. You look at how the Planned Parenthood was introduced to kill off the seed. It was the same thing as Pharaoh when he said that, when he came in, he said, these guys are multiplying too quick. And so they put us in slavery. It was the same idea. We were multiplying too quick, so they brought Planned Parenthood in to try to destroy us, but they couldn't destroy us. We are a resilient people. We are a resilient, they've been trying to destroy us from the beginning of time, but we are resilient people. The Most High, I'm telling you, the Most High, He has his hand on us. He's always had his hand on us. He never left us. We left him, but he's never left us. And you know, so when Christopher was talking, I mean, I'm like ooh, 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 because there's so much in there that we need to understand and know, particularly when, you know, from our generation, my and Chris' generation on down. I mean, we have so much to offer and so much to share in that vein.
Right. So, and that's the thing. I think that I'm gonna handle Sister Cook, and then I'm gonna handle Sister Yah. Then we're gonna go into our Q&A offline. But go ahead, Sister.
Well, and what I was getting ready to say was along the same line as Brother Christopher and Brother Paul, in terms of how we've been demonized from day one. I remember reading in Post-Traumatic Slave Disorder from Gilles de Groot that, you know, how even our mothers, there was a scenario in the book to where there were two mothers, black and white mothers. Sons were both doing really, really great. The white mother was like, oh my God, no, the black mother to the white mother was like, oh my God, your son is awesome, doing really good in school, really good in sports. I know you got to be proud. And then the white woman says the exact same thing to the black mother, but she's like, oh no, he ain't doing nothing, blah, blah, blah. You know, girl, he this, that, and other. And that stems back from, you know, you're not hyping your child up because you don't want the slave master to take them, you know, so you kind of you know, dog their talents or push their talents down because you don't want them to seem too haughty in front of somebody that would want to take them for their talents or whatnot. And so and that kind of speaks to what we're going through now. These kids don't have any pride in themselves. They have the representation, but they choose to look at the other representation, what's on the videos, what they see on TV. You know, Brother Rodney talked about the emasculation of the rappers. They have them wearing dresses. Lil Wayne and others, they're kissing, and these are guys that our young men think are cool because they got money, you know. And I think the system does recognize their influence because they pay them all this money. Hey, wear this fashion or wear that fashion, knowing that they have the influence to influence the younger generation and the generations that look up to them because they have all this money. And so that's the destruction is there, and it's constant and consistent. The message is.
Unmute myself. There we go. Excellent point. That was really good. Okay, I'm gonna save my comments for the Q&A. I'm not gonna keep, because Facebook is probably like, oh my gosh, you're going crazy. All right, Sister Yah, go ahead.
It was so inspiring to hear Brother Paul and Brother Chris talk about that part of history, because you know, I'm a lot older than what everybody thinks, but I remember the Panthers, the last part of the Panthers. And here's the deal with the COINTELPRO. If you remember information, their big thing was they were trying to prevent the rise of the Black Messiah. So, you know, that's why they had to take out Fred Hampton. That's why they had to take out so many different people, not realizing, and here's the whole deal, with them making that comment, this is, what's his name? The guy, not Hoover, but the crazy guy who put COINTELPRO together. Now, his name escapes me, and I know Brother Paul and Chris both know his name, but he ran the FBI at the time, and their whole thing was to stop the rise of the Black Messiah. And
J. Edgar Hoover.
Yes, so I was right. So they didn't understand that he ain't here. Their whole thing was they didn't realize the Black Messiah is not here on earth. So with them trying to prevent the rise of these Black men who were strong, relevant, and had, especially Fred Hampton, who had the skills to galvanize people. I mean, he had gathered all the groups together all across Chicago, and he was getting ready to make some noise, literally, because they were all white, Black, poor whites, poor Blacks, poor people, poor. And it doesn't make any difference what the color is. Poor is poor, knows no race. just like back in the day where poor slaves and poor white people were together, they understood it. And they understood this man galvanized all those people, and they said he had to go. And they murdered him. And they realized they murdered him. They called it out. But the thing is that he had a strong voice and he had to take him out. And that's what they're still trying to do today with the demasculation of our boys, with trying to place Black feminism on women. We've always worked. Black women have always worked. We never needed to be in some type of feminist movement because that's what we've always had to do. But some Black women got caught up into that. Yeah, women's rights. What are you talking about? Your man has never disrespected you. Man's always loved you. So just getting caught up in all that stuff and being separated, making sure that Black men and Black women don't communicate. I mean, when you think about how many Black women are single, and they say it's because of all this other craziness, and how Black women don't believe that they're beautiful just by themselves instead of having to add hair and makeup and all this other craziness. Not saying you don't have to add some, but not to the point where you don't look like yourself. And so all of these things and trying to destroy who we are. But the great thing we can celebrate is that they can't, because we belong to a king who's of a whole nother place. And I mean, even with if you think about crazy Trump setting up this space, his space force, so they can take out any kind of enemy coming from space. Come on now, you're gonna take out who? Who you gonna take out? You know, so it's just so much that's going on in that the powers that be think they have control of, and they have no control of, because the power and the strength that belong to the Hebrew is of a whole nother place.
Yes. So, and something that we about to go to Q&A, you guys. But check this out. That's why a lot of times I believe it was either Sister Sonia or Sister Nadia that alluded to this when we kind of like in the chat. I think it was like the first couple comments. Well, cognitive dissonance, like the hardest people. If I'm ministering and we're talking about Torah, we're talking about returning to the covenant and everything. It's easy when I'm speaking to I'm trying to think a person of a Latino or an Asian person or somebody of a different culture or race. You know, it's one human race, but y'all know what I'm getting at. I don't have any issues. They're like, y'all, the people of the book for real? Well, come on, let's go. You know, the hardest people to convince? Us. Cognitive dissonance, because this disagrees with what you've been given, and you've been given something that was bad. It wasn't. No, watch this. You can look. The devil don't. Remember we blame everything on the devil, but Hasatan does not. He doesn't tell you he's the devil right off the bat. He gives you truth and error mixed together, intermingled, right? So that again, Sister Sonia, that goes back to Deuteronomy 22. But that's a whole nother. We'll deal with it in Q&A. But like so what he does is he tells you your heritage don't matter. Your who you are doesn't matter, because we're all one in Jesus, and all that, it doesn't matter. We all love. There's neither Jew nor Greek, out of context, and it doesn't matter. We're all one. No, that's not really what that means, because if it doesn't matter, then you got to rip out all the genealogies. You got to rip them all out. And the Bible, yes, it's a spiritual book, but you can't go, remember what I said, you can't go to Sod without dealing with Peshat. You got to deal with the straight. So you got to find out who these people are, because it ties into biblical prophecy. It ties into the end of days. And you need to know who these people are and know that they're not in mass in the land right now. The land is full of Gentiles, as what the Mashiach told us. The times of the Gentiles have not been fulfilled yet. So, woo, y'all was getting into Q&A stuff. I was like, okay, do I say something in the chat? because we about to get into some heavy stuff. Look, it's nothing to be offended about. We have to talk about these things. Iron sharpens iron. But anyway, let me be quiet. So check this out. We thank Facebook, everybody that's tuned in. Matter of fact, let me make sure I don't have any questions. I'll go back as far as I can.
Sometimes it's good for Facebook to hear these things.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. But I know we go, you know, when I was in y'all know this, some of y'all know this. When I was in Bible Bowl, we were national champions in 2009. And when I showed y'all the trophy and all that, anytime y'all want to see it, I'll be willing to show y'all. But here's the thing. We would come in, and Paul knows Paul knows what it's like. Some of y'all brothers that grew up in the church know what this is like, where we would have practice. Sometimes we come out speaking in tongues. Other times we come out crying because somebody got on somebody's nerves, because we would go at it. You know what I'm saying? That's what our Q&As be like. Facebook needs to hear it, but sometimes Facebook ain't even ready for this, because Great Awakening Indy be going at it. This is Teshuva class, and we make each other better. So anyway, so let's see. Questions that don't pertain to the specific lesson, I'll deal with those offline. So if you got questions about something that has nothing to do with the lesson, we like I use a lot of words, you know. So we gotta move on from that. Let's see. Remember the days of old. Zoom. Yes, you do have to be on Zoom to be in the Q&A. So if you like to be a part of the class or tune in, inbox me so I can send you an invite and everything like that. But again, since those questions are that things that come up, you want to be involved in the class, we keep things amicable, meaning we don't use profanity. Ain't gonna be no cussing, ain't gonna be none of that. And we keep things amicable, meaning we show respect. We may disagree on a particular subject, but we don't get out of the way with stuff like that. You understand what I'm saying? I'm using words that y'all readily understand, but we don't do that. So if we don't agree with a certain topic, we keep your mouth shut. Don't run somebody down or run we're not into hurting feelings. So we want to show love to people, because remember, yes, we got to present the truth, but we're a light to the nations. They need to be saved. They need to be saved too. So we got to show love and be amicable. So if you want to be in on the Q&A, I'll inbox me, and we'll get you right. So with that being said, we want to say Shabbat Shalom to all of our social media viewers. Thank you for tuning in to Great Awakening Indy's Teshuva class. Today was about holiness. We really we got to a little bit. There's so much more. We might have to do a part 2 next week. So we love y'all. Shabbat Shalom.